She would have been up and down that ladder with her figs making fig preserves by now. But at this point she knew that all the excuses in the world would not hold much water with Norma. I'm in big trouble now, she thought, before she drifted off. Earlier that morning, Norma Warren, a still pretty brunette woman in her 60s, had been at home thumbing through her Linens for Less catalog when her aunt's neighbor and Norma's beautician, Tot Whooten, had called and informed her that her Aunt Elner had fallen off the ladder again. Norma had hung up the phone and immediately run to the kitchen sink and thrown cold water in her face to keep herself from fainting. She had a tendency to faint when she was upset. Then she quickly picked up the wall phone and dialed her husband Mackie's cell phone number at work. Mackie, who was the manager of the hardware department at the Home Depot out at the mall, glanced at the readout of the number calling and answered. "Hey, what's up?" "Aunt Elner's fallen off the ladder again," said Norma frantically. "You better get over there right now. God knows what she's broken. She could be lying over there in her yard dead for all I know. I told you we should have taken that ladder away from her." Mackie, who had been married to Norma for 43 years and was used to her fits of hysteria, particularly where Aunt Elner was concerned, said, "All right, Norma, now just calm down. I'm sure she's fine. She hasn't killed herself yet, has she?" "I told her not to get on that ladder again, but does she listen to me?" Mackie started walking toward the door past plumbing supplies and spoke to a man on the way out. "Hey, Jake, take over for me. I'll be right back." Norma continued talking a mile a minute in his ear. "Mackie, call me the minute you get there and let me know. But if she is dead, don't even tell me. I can't handle a tragedy right now. Oh, I could just kill her. I knew something like this was going to happen. Norma, just hang up and try to relax. Go sit in the living room, and I'll call you in a few minutes. This is it. I am taking that ladder away from her as of today. The very idea of an old woman like her—" "Hang up, Norma." "She could have broken every bone in her body." "I'll call you," he said, and hung up. Mackie walked out to the back parking lot, got into his Ford SUV, and headed over to Elner's house. He had learned the hard way whenever there was a problem with Aunt Elner. Having Norma there only made matters worse, so he made Norma stay at home until he could get to Elner's and size up the situation. After Mackie hung up, Norma ran into the living room like he had said to do, but she certainly could not calm down or even sit down until he called to tell her everything was all right. "I swear to God," she thought, "if she hasn't killed herself this time, not only am I taking that ladder away from her, I'm going over and personally chopping down that damn fig tree once and for all." As she paced up and down the living room, wringing her hands, she suddenly remembered she should be practicing the positive self-talk exercises she had learned in a program she was doing designed to help people like herself who suffered from panic attacks and anxiety. Her daughter Linda had sent it to her for her birthday. She also tried to do her biofeedback deep breathing techniques that she had learned from a woman in her yoga class. As she paced, she breathed deeply and repeated a list of positive affirmations to herself. "It's nothing to worry about. She has fallen out of the tree twice before, and it's always been all right. It's just catastrophic thinking. It's not real. You will laugh about this later. There's nothing to be afraid of. 99% of the things you worry about never happen. You're not having a heart attack. It's just anxiety. It's not going to hurt you." But as hard as she tried, she couldn't help but be anxious. Aunt Elner was the closest living relative she had left in the world, besides Mackie and their daughter Linda, of course. After her own mother had died, her aunt's well-being had become the main focus of most of her worries, and it had not been easy. As she passed by the photograph of a smiling Aunt Elner she kept on the mantel, she sighed. Who would have thought that that sweet, innocent-looking, rosy-cheeked old lady with her white hair pulled back in a bun could cause so much trouble? But then Aunt Elner had always been stubborn. Years ago, when Aunt Elner's husband, Uncle Will, had died, it had taken Norma forever to get her to move into town so she could keep a better eye on her. Finally, after years of Norma begging her, Aunt Elner had agreed to sell the farm and move into a small house in town, but she was still hard to handle. Norma dearly loved Aunt Elner and hated to have to nag at her all the time, but she was forced to. Aunt Elner was deaf as a post and would not have gotten a hearing aid if Norma hadn't nagged at her. Aunt Elner never locked her doors, she didn't eat right, she would not go to the doctor, and worst of all, she wouldn't let Norma straighten up her house for her, something Norma was just dying to do. Aunt Elner's house was a disaster, with pictures hung all over the wall, helter-skelter, and her front porch was a mess. She had all kinds of things strewn everywhere: rocks, pine cones, shells, birds' nests, wooden chickens, old plants, and 4 or 5 old rusty metal bulldog door-stoppers that her neighbor Ruby Robinson had given her. It was appalling to Norma, whose house and porch were always kept as neat as a pin. And it was only getting worse. Just yesterday there had been yet another new addition to the clutter: a hideously ugly jar of plastic sunflowers. Norma had cringed when she first saw it, but had asked sweetly, "Where did those come from, honey?" As if she didn't know. It was Aunt Elner's neighbor across the street, that Merle Wheeler, who was always bringing over the most hideous-looking objects. Merle was the one who had brought over that ratty old fake brown leather office chair with the wheels, a chair that Elner had put out on her front porch for all the world to see. At the time, Norma had been head of the Beautify Elmwood Springs committee and had tried every possible way to make her aunt get rid of it, but Elner had said she liked to roll around in it and water all of her plants. Norma had even tried to talk Mackie into going over there in the middle of the night and stealing it, but he wouldn't do it. As usual, he stuck up for Aunt Elner and told Norma she was making a mountain out of a molehill and that she was beginning to act just like her mother, which had not been true. Wanting to get rid of that chair had not been snobism on her part, simply a matter of civic pride, or at least she had hoped so. Norma had a complete horror of being anything like her mother. Her mother, Elner's younger and prettier sister, Ida Shimfissle, had married well and had never been very nice to Elner. She had refused even to visit Elner after she moved to town, as long as she kept chickens in her backyard. "It's so country," she had said. But yesterday, when Aunt Elner pointed at the sunflowers and announced with pride, "Aren't they pretty? Merle brought them over, and you don't have to water them either," it had been all Norma could do not to grab them and run screaming to the nearest trash can. But instead she had just nodded pleasantly. Norma also knew where Merle had gotten those flowers. She had seen some exactly like them at Tuesday mornings. Unfortunately, the local cemetery was just full of similar arrangements. Norma had always been appalled that people would actually put plastic flowers on a grave. To her they seemed as cheap-looking as black velvet paintings of the Last Supper. As far as Norma was concerned, there was no excuse for having bad taste anymore, or at least none that she could think of, when all you had to do was look in magazines and simply copy what you saw, or watch the design shows on the Home and Garden Channel. But it wasn't only home and entertainment matters that bothered Norma. She was constantly dismayed at the way people dressed out in public. You owe it to your fellow human beings to try and look as nice as you can. It's just common courtesy, her mother had always said. But now all anybody ever wore, even on planes, were tennis shoes, sweatsuits, and baseball caps. Not that Norma dressed up all the time like she used to, but she never went anywhere without earrings and makeup. On those 2 points, she could never compromise. When Norma looked up at the clock again, it was almost 8:30. Why wasn't Mackie calling? He'd had plenty of time.